Morning. Expectations. When we did that meditation on I want for you what you want for you, I have a confession. Oftentimes when I say that, I'll say, I want for you what I want for you. Anyone ever do that? Am I alone? No. What happens when we do that? We kind of decide what they're supposed to be like, don't we? We lose that trust. It happens. But the important thing is, what do we do about that? Well, I love stories, and I have a story of the ox and the Brahmin that I'd like to share with you that talks about that. There was this poor Brahmin. He was a subsistence farmer. And he was given this little ox, just a precious little ox, so full of love. They just loved each other so much. And they grew together to respect each other, and the ox grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and his horns grew bigger, and they grew way out. And pretty soon, he was a grown ox. And because of the great joy that this ox had given to the Brahmin, he named him Great Joy. And Great Joy and the Brahmin would go out and they'd work in the fields, and the children would come and hang on the ox's big horns, and they'd use them like a tree limb. Boom, boom. And ox was just so grateful for the love that he received and he gave. And Brahmin was so grateful for the love he received and gave to Great Joy. But Great Joy knew that Brahmin had problems, that Brahmin needed money. So one night, Great Ox prayed in deep meditation. Can you imagine an ox praying with his big horns out there? He's just praying. He's going, "Oh, Spirit, guide me. Guide me. How can I give this gift to my master? How can I give to my master to give back from all he's given me?" And as he sat in silence, the answer came. And he went, "Oh, I know what I can do." And so the ox, with his big hoofs, went over to the Brahmin's tiny hut. And he didn't have panes in his windows, but he did have a windowsill. And he took his big horns and he put one inside and then got the other inside. And he said, "Oh, dear Brahmin, may I interrupt your work?" And the Brahmin looked up and put down the page that he'd been working on. And he said, "What is it, my dear Great Joy?" And he said, "I have an idea. Do you trust me?" And the Brahmin said, "Oh, yes, I trust you." He said, "So here's what I want you to do. Did you know you have the strongest ox in the land?" The Brahmin goes, "I do? Where is it?" And the oxen says, "It is me. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the village tomorrow, and I want you to find the greatest, richest merchant, and I want you to bet him 1,000 pieces of silver that I can pull 100 carts filled with heavy boulders." And the Brahmin goes, "You can do that?" And Great Joy says, "I can." So the next day, the Brahmin does as he's told, and he goes to the village, he does his work, he takes care of his business, and then he goes to the tea center, and he sees a very rich merchant, and he invites him over for tea, and they talk, and then the Brahmin goes, "I have an ox." And the merchant goes, "Yeah, I have a lot of them, and they cost me a lot of money." And he said, "No, I have a very strong ox." And the merchant again goes, "Well, of course, that's what oxen are. They're strong." And the Brahmin says, "No, I have a very strong ox." The merchant's just going, "Well, how strong is your ox?" He goes, My ox can pull 100 carts filled with heavy boulders. Merchant says, no, he can't. And the Brahmin says, would you like to make a wager? Sure, I'll make a wager. I'll bet you 1,000 pieces of silver. You're on. And they make the date for the following week for this challenge. So on the way home, the Brahmin starts going, what did I do? No one, no ox can pull 100 carts. What did I do? I've got to figure out how to make this happen. I've got to figure out what I've got to get him on an exercise. I've got to feed him. I've got to get him working. So he goes home. And here, this joyful relationship that they've had turns into boot camp. And he starts telling the ox what to do. And great joy is, well, okay. He does all these things. So the day of the race comes, or the challenge. And they go to town. And Oxen's all ready to give his gift, to make this happen for his master that he loves so much. And as they put this yoke on him, and behind him are these 100 carts, the Brahmin pulls up this giant whip, and he on the back of Great Ox. And Great Ox just goes, he doesn't move. He doesn't budge 1 inch. And the merchant says, well, as I thought. And he has to turn over the 1,000 pieces of silver. So they go home in silence. But later that night, again after prayer, the ox goes to his Brahmin that he loves so much, and he goes, have I ever disappointed you? Have I ever not plowed your fields? Have I ever harmed your children? Have I put dirt on your carpet? And the Brahmin looks into the face of great joy, who he loves so much, and he goes, no, you have done nothing but give me great joy. So Brahmin looks at him and said, then why did you want to steal my gift? Why? Brahmin had no answer, except that he was afraid. He was so afraid, and he had already spent the money. He had expectations of what he was going to do with this money, and he thought he knew better how to do it. And he looked at the Brahmin and said, how can I make this up to you? I am so very sorry. And so Great Ox said, go tomorrow, bet 2,000 in silver. And Brahmin, without a blink, says, I will do so. So they do the same thing, but they make the bet for the next day. Just come down. And so this time, when he puts the yoke and all those carts are lined up, he reaches down and he gathers a garland and he puts it on the oxen's head. And he bends over and he gives him a kiss. And Oxen just goes, and his oxen's heart just goes, oh, and spirit just flows through him and that energy, and he takes those carts, and even though he only had to move them, he started running, and he ran around the village with such great joy. And the merchant just handed the money. And he said, how did he do that? And the Brahmin said, with love and respect. Love and respect. I want for you what you want for you. That's love and respect. And I looked at it, and as I was thinking about this talk on expectations, I started thinking about what happens when we make what I decided to call the little e. I want for you what I want for you. What's it lead to? What kind of expectation does that lead to? It does a couple of things. One, we start thinking we know how it should happen, don't we? We think we know how you should do your job. Has anyone that you've loved ever given you a gift or an idea that they want to surprise you with, but you have an expectation of what it's going to be? And what if it's not just what you thought? What happens? Sometimes we start judging it like, well, he didn't get me the red roses, and he only got one, and I wanted a dozen. You know, blah, 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 blah. All those things that can happen. But also it can be very, very subtle, like, I think I know better how we should do this. I want to do it this way. And it leads to judgment, leads to micromanagement of that other person. And when it does that, what it can do is reject them, just like with Ox. He rejected Ox. He rejected great joy because he started his own expectations. But what happens if we turn that around? What if we go to what I call the big E of expectations? I want for you what you want for you. I honor you, and I honor Spirit, and I know that Spirit is so much greater than anything that I could think in my little e. And we open up to that expectation of, I expect the good. I expect the absolute good to happen. What happens then? We turn expectation into acceptance. Total different process, isn't it? When the Brahmin accepted so sweetly and trusted that gentle Ox knew what to do and how to do it, he then was able to appreciate him. And with that appreciation comes support. So we can have little e expectation, outline what should be done, start notifying that person because it's not your checklist of how it should be done. That ends up in rejection. Or we can do acceptance, appreciation, and support, which leads us in this cycle from the other side. What did it do for Ox? What did it do for gentle joy? Great joy? He was able to feel open. He was able to accept and create and be good. And that's what happens to us. When you talk to someone, of your child, and you're open, and you're accepting, and you appreciate them and you support them, it allows them to become vulnerable. It allows them to be able to say, hey, I don't know how to do this. But if you're in judgment about them, they're not about to tell you something's wrong because they're afraid they're going to get in more trouble. And so they become closed. They become defensive. But if you hold with that support and acceptance, then that love becomes open. And then there's allowed the creativity and the child blooms, people bloom. Love increases and the spirituality just flows. Or the other way, closed, defensive, protective, and oftentimes instead of feeling love, what does the person feel when they get that far? They start closing down and they resist, just like Great Ox did. And oftentimes, even when we say the big E, I expect the highest good, don't we often think what that highest good is supposed to look like anyway? Anybody do that too? Sure we do. And this, I like stories obviously. Story of a farmer, it's a Zen story. It's very well known, you've probably heard it. But it talks about how we really don't know the big picture. There's a farmer, and in his field is his horse. And one day his horse runs away. And the neighbors come by and they go, oh, that is so bad. I'm so sorry you lost your horse. And the farmer says, maybe good, maybe bad. Don't know. And the next day, the horse comes back bringing 3 wild horses behind him. And the neighbors go, wow, that's just great. And the farmer says, maybe good, maybe bad. And again, the next day, his son's riding one of the new horses, and he falls off and he breaks his leg. What are the neighbors going to say? Horrible, how bad. And what's the farmer going to say? Good, maybe bad. We don't know. And the next day, the military comes to draft. And they pass his son up because he's broken his leg. Again, maybe good, maybe bad. We don't know because we see from such a small perspective. And if we hold on to our expectations, even when we do expect always the good, we still can limit it. So all we can do is open and change that word expect into accept. Accept that which is within you. Accept the good of others. Appreciate the good of others. And know that this process, as it unfolds, is exactly as it should be. Not what you think it should be, or not what it appears to be, but what it truly is in spirit, what it truly is at the sense in the core of our being. And honor that. So I ask you this week, as you go out, think about the people you love. And as we did in the meditation, bring them forward. Think, am I wanting for you what you want for you? Or is there a part of me that wants for you what you want for you, but I know how to get it for you better? That's another one. Oh, I'll support you on that. Hey, let's do it this way. Right? It's nature. I can't tell you the times, and I have friends in the audience that will say this. I think you should. Ooh. Oh. And I do it a lot. Because, I have good intentions, right? Very good intentions. And those of you who are here for Reverend David's talk, do you remember his workshop? Were many of you here for his workshop? Not many, okay. He did the greatest I've seen on intention. He asked us, before he did this workshop, what is more important, intention or method? And people are like, yeah, method, intention, all of this. Well, he had us line up, and he said, we're just to walk across the front from here to there. But the key was, no two people could do it the same. It was great. It was fun. Everybody did it a different way, and it was fantastic. But the lesson was so imprinted on me. Afterwards, he said, so what? So what's more important, intention or method? People, yeah. He said, how many of you? He said, how many of you thought that your idea was stolen before you got there? Because everybody all raised their hand, yeah. But you figured something out, didn't you? You figured how to do it. Well, think about 75 people in a room being able to do different methods to how an intention can occur. What can God do? What can Spirit do? What can Spirit do? And we have this opportunity now with expectations and changes in what we're doing in our church. We have an opportunity with a new minister coming in. We have an opportunity to look at how are we going to approach this? Are we going to approach it with our little e of expectations? Are we going to be watching like, well, we did it like this before. That's really easy to do, isn't it? Or, I've done this, and here's how I did it. That's the little e. But what happens if we, in turn, change our expectations to, wow, we unanimously voted this incredible being in, and we accept that he is full of spirit and has all the great intentions, and we honor that we don't know every way that intention is going to work. How do you think we're going to go? What do you think will happen? Don't know, do we? But I can guarantee you it's going to be something wonderful. It's going to be something marvelous because we are going to be living from our highest good. So we are going to be in a great place, right? We, by turning from those little expectations, even when I say it, judgment, appreciation, I can't help but close and open. Those that know me know I do a lot of body language. I do sign dancing, and my heart goes and moves, and I can't help it when I talk about that little e to get smaller. So I want you to think about that when you open and open and open what happens. In this process, we often forget that good, just like in the story of the farmer, doesn't always look like we think. And the other one we kind of fool around with a lot is perfection. Everyone thinks perfection's pretty. And what else do we think perfection is? Perfection right now to me is smelling those brownies. Can you smell them? They're wonderful. That just fills my heart. But that perfection, we don't know. Perfection may be him falling off the horse. Perfection may be the horse is coming back. But what's important is that we trust and accept. Now, this is for Reverend Mary. Spreadsheet, Reverend Mary. Spreadsheet, just for you. Did you know that in this, our Bible, our personal teachings, Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes uses any derivation, a form of expectation or expect, only 15 times. How many times do you think she uses acceptance or accept? Well, 73 that I counted specifically, but they're in other places. Look at the difference and why. There's a couple of reasons. One is when you expect. Where are our expectations? Are they here or are they in the future? Future, right. Where's accept? Right here, right now. So even when he says expect, most of the time he puts it together with expect and accept. They almost go together as a... It took me a while to find one that didn't have it in it for what I wanted on our reading today. So think about that. Think about how powerful it is if you'll just change one perspective from expectation to acceptance. So today, right now, where are you? Are you in expectation or acceptance? Keep checking in with you. Namaste. Keep checking in. So please join me in a treatment for acceptance. In this moment, I open to God's Spirit love, knowing they are all the same, and knowing that this greater, higher power than this small being that I am dwells within me and guides me every time I open to it. Every time I open my heart like a waterfall, standing under Spirit, it is there to support and uplift me. So I accept this. And I accept that the same power flows through every other person. And I release any expectations of how they should be, how they should act, what I expect them to do, and honor. Honor their being from the deepest part of my being. I honor them with all my heart, and I open my heart fuller and fuller for acceptance. And for this I am so grateful. For these teachings I am so grateful. And for everyone that walks through this door, I honor their path. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you very much. I love you guys. Isn't that great? We all love each other. What a fest. Oh, expectations. Boy, a lot of things can come to mind when you have that word, don't they? Yeah. Positive? Maybe not so positive? Depends on how you look at it. Well, for those of you that are new today, 2 years ago, and Reverend Mary referred to this, started a whole new venture in this church, didn't we, you guys? We were sitting in Reverend Sue's front room. Do you remember that? Reverend Judith, who was our minister before with Reverend Bob, they had just announced at our March meeting, congregational meeting, that they would be leaving us in June. And so the Fab Five got together with Reverend Judith to determine where our direction would go in this church. And it was very clear, and Judith was so clear. She was wonderful. She was so supportive. So very clear that we had all of the spiritual knowledge, all of the leadership we could possibly need to carry us to the next level. And Reverend Pam, and Reverend Kay, and Reverend Sharon, and Reverend Judith were very clear that the two people to do that were Reverend Mary and Reverend Sue. And we knew it for many, many reasons. And go into those as the talk goes on in terms of using them as examples. You're going to be an example. But the idea was that they were to be in leadership and help us find and support the church through changes and keep its stability, keep us moving forward and find the perfect minister. And that was exactly, we wrote that letter to the board supporting them on April 8th, 2012. And our new minister is coming on April 7th, 2014. So good job. Very, very good job. So right after Mary and Sue took over in June, I was talking to Mary in her office, and I go, well, Mary, how's it going? And she goes, never believed she'd use this word, great. But she added, there's no expectations. Do you remember that, Mary? And it got me thinking a lot. What does that mean when we have expectations? And what does it mean when we don't have expectations? And I thought of a story, and when I was told that the title for the talk today would be Expectations, I thought of the story that I learned in a leadership training when I was on the faculty of Shasta College. And it's about the butcher and the dog. Has anyone heard it? It's a pretty good story in terms of expectations. So there's this butcher in a small village, and it's toward the end of the day, and he's just cleaning up his cabinet and all of the cases, and still open, but getting ready to close. And he notices this beautiful, big dog, long, shiny hair, about the size of a St. Bernard, sitting by the door, looking. And pretty soon, the dog prances in, puts his paws right up on the counter, and the butcher's looking at the dog, and he takes his mouth and goes, and out comes a piece of paper. And the butcher reads it, and it says, please allow my dog to purchase 12 sausages and 1 leg of lamb. Okay. And next, with his dog's paw still up there, he goes, and out comes the money to pay for it. Well, the butcher is just absolutely amazed, but he's so stunned he actually does what the paper says. So he wraps very carefully the sausages and the leg of lamb in paper, makes a long tie, hands it over the counter, and the dog gently puts it in his mouth, turns around, trots out the door. Well, this is too much for the butcher. He throws off his apron, and he closes up very quickly, and he starts following the butcher out. Oh, yeah, he's following the dog. I'm glad you're listening. Just checking. Good job. So he starts following this dog, and the dog meat swinging in his mouth, just prancing along, hits a light. It's red. With his paw, waits for it to walk, and across. And he walks like this for a couple of blocks, and he sees a bus stop, and he flops down. One bus goes by, another bus, and on the third bus, he looks and he goes, puts up his paw, bus stops, up the stairs, and on his collar is a little pouch that says, bus fare, and he goes, well, the bus driver goes, right again, so stunned, he goes ahead and takes the money. And the dog prances, sits in the front, butcher gets on, sits behind the dog. The dog sitting there, and he's watching as his blocks go by. Pretty soon, looks up, hits the call, stops, hops off, butcher runs after him, and he goes running to a gate, pushes the gate open, and goes up to the door. And then he just stops, and he shakes his head, and he scratches, and he tries to look or do some things, and finally he runs from the door to the window, goes bam, 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 runs back, waiting wagon tail, Nothing. So he goes back and barks the door and comes back. Well, the door opens. And this man goes, "You stupid dog! How could you?" The dog. And the butcher just goes, "What? This dog is a miracle. What are you doing?" And the man stands up straight and says, "This is the second time this week he's forgotten his keys." Expectation. So let's look at that. Let's look about what happens when we have what I call the small e, the little expectation, the expectation that thinks we know best. We will go into judgment. What happened? He was micromanaging to the point where this miracle dog had done everything right but one thing, right? Didn't hit the checklist. So what did he do? He rejected this whole process. Have any of you ever done that? Don't look, Dwight. This is a very embarrassing talk when someone very significant to you is in the audience, because they know how many times you micromanage, and they know how many times. They know. I'm learning. So it's not how many times you go to expectation, to the little e. How many times did you come back? So let's look at this. He negated everything. Think about in your life. Have you done that? We do that. We get to where we get an idea. And if it's not done exactly as we want it to, if the color's a little off, if they bring the wrong brand of bread home, hello, and we can negate it. So let's look at this story. If everything had done the same, that the dog, everything had occurred exactly the same, but he gets to the door, he's forgotten his keys, he runs back and forth. But the owner opens it and just goes, "Oh, you great dog," and he just hugs him and scratches his ears and wags his tail, and the dog's so happy. "Let's go eat this feast. And by the way, we'll have to work on how a better process for those keys." Totally different, isn't it? Totally different. Totally honored that that dog's intention was to bring him his food. And he did everything he could to do that. And together they could work on how to change it so that one little thing could get better. So when Mary said there were no expectations, what were there? What was there, Mary? What did you feel? You don't have to answer, but you can. Thank you. I don't want to be quizzed. But I believe, because I know this is what we felt for you and Sue, we felt acceptance. So instead of expectations, we accepted, and with acceptance, the highest good. That's the big E, not the little expectation of our own ego. That's the big E of expectation. That means that I want for you what you want for you, because I trust that the universe is unfolding exactly as it should be, and my little mind has no idea how big it can be. And I trust your intentions. I trust that your intentions are good. I trust that it's going to unfold, and my job is to support you for that to happen. And that's what we said to you that day, wasn't it? We said, the five of us, we support you. So we didn't have a checklist. We never had a checklist. We just said we love you and we support you. And you as a congregation said to Mary and Sue, we love you and we support you. So what happened with that? Their job, remember their job was to, quote, keep the wheels on the wagon? Well, they created the new supersonic jet train stream, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't wheels on the wagon. It was a whole new creation of love and appreciation and support in this church that was able to manifest for us the perfect minister coming. Amen. Amen. Exactly. I like that. And so let's break that down so we can use it in our own life too. We gave them acceptance, which led to what? Appreciation. Appreciate you with all our hearts. We appreciate you, right? We appreciate them. And what did they do? They appreciated us. They appreciated us. And that created a support system for us to support them and for us to feel supported. So just like with the dog, when he was, oh, don't make me cry, when he was given the love, it turned around, that support allowed the dog to be open and vulnerable. It allowed that feeling of openness so that felt safe that we could work on solutions together. We didn't have to be defending any position. Where if someone's in judgment of you, you're getting very protective. You're not open, are you? And you try to justify your way. It's just a normal process. And when someone's with you with a checklist, that's what happens in our personal life, in our work life, in our co-life. That's what can happen. And fortunately, we learned from them, they learned from us, and we kept supporting. And then that support leads to vulnerability and openness, which leads to incredible creativity. And I'm not going to list all the creative things that have happened in the 2 years. We went over them on the congregational meeting, and most of you have participated in them, and you know we have grown. We've grown in spirit, we've grown in service, we've grown financially, we have blossomed, and we've done it creatively. We haven't been linear. And there's been the trust and the appreciation, the support to allow it to happen, wasn't there? Yes. And so by doing this, what we got was complete love and a higher level of spirituality. Right. And not the closing, defensive, restricting, almost passive-aggressive shutting down. And it's pretty incredible. So that's what happened with Mary and Sue in the congregation. But you know, there were some other people that had to let go of little ease, little expectations to allow the last 2 years to happen. And that was Paul, and that was Charlie. Think about that. Think about, yeah, woo! Think about it. Well, hey, it's a party. Where are you, Paul? I know Paul's here somewhere. He told me he was here. And what do I mean by that? Well, when Mary and Sue said yes, they said yes to an already full life or a transformational life, which both, Paul particularly was thrilled with. Paul, are you in the room? Okay, Paul, I love you. But Paul particularly, my wife's going to retire. We're going to go on a cruise to Europe. We're going to have more time together. Even though she wants to write, she's going to do this. We're going to have more time for all these other things. His expectation. Understandably, that was the plan. But then Mary said yes. And for Mary to be able to do this, she had to have the same acceptance and appreciation and support for Paul for it to happen. So not only does this work at that level, it had to happen on their personal level. And for Sue and Charlie, oh my God, Sue's working full time. She teaches yoga. She's, like Mary, an assistant minister here. And she has a commuter marriage. And Charlie was able to go from that little E of what you expected to that acceptance, appreciation, and support. Pretty great, isn't it? Yeah, pretty great. Pretty great. And oftentimes, even when we think we're going to the big E, the big expectation of acceptance and accepting the highest good, we sometimes still, I know no one in this room just says, I certainly don't, that we have our own definition of what good means. We have an idea of what the highest good is, what perfection is. Anybody have that? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the hand. And what happens is one of the most dangerous expectations for me in spiritual growth is when we think that expectation and perfect means it always makes us feel happy and good. So dangerous. And Ernest Holmes always says, when all is right and perfect and we have a specific belief about perfection, boy, we can have an internal struggle, can't we? Because if we're putting on to that affirmation that all is perfect and we have our expectation of perfection, it can mess you up. And I could use a Kleenex, please. Thank you. I appreciate it. Excuse me. So it's very dangerous, and you want to be able to look at that in yourself and trust. You have to trust the higher intention. And our great choice of Reverend David Cumming, he taught us a lot about that in a workshop. And that workshop, he had us asked us, what is more important, intention or method? And most of us are at 50-50 and saying, intention, method, all that. And so he went ahead and did an exercise where he had us walk across a room and asked us afterwards. He told us before, he said, you have to do it. You can't do it like anybody else. So 75 people traveled across that room 75 different ways. And then he asked the question, what's more important, intention or method? So when we have our highest good, we still may have limiting how those methods can occur or how it can appear to what our own framework has. So we have to open up what those expectations can be. And now, the greatest, I believe, change of expectations that have to happen is there was a reason we chose Mary and Sue. There was a reason we chose. They had such incredible qualities. Mary with her law and absolute principle, and Sue with her heart and compassion. Yet, so their perspective of coming, of expectations, are really different when you go to discuss something. Law, principle, heart, open. So they had to work very hard to go from that little E to the acceptance. And when they did that, Mary put it so beautifully last week, I'm going to steal your quote. Sue learned to appreciate my spreadsheets. And then Mary said, and I learned to cry. If that doesn't tell you what going from that little E to the big A can do, is incredible. But the greatest thing that Mary and Sue gave us is teaching us actually what the principle of love and law means. They demonstrated it. And how they demonstrated it is they were able to take that concept that says all is love, yet all is law. And they took that love that Sue had, and they took that absolute principle of Mary, and they were able to take them and integrate them into the heart, into the shishin. And I found a quote that I don't know how I ever passed it up. It's just right there so clear. But it demonstrates the highest of who and what they did. And it's Ernest Holmes explaining how it works. And if you see what happened the last 2 years, you'll see it made it work. It says, love, Sue, points away. Law. God, hurts. Law, Mary, makes it possible. That's what happened. That is what happened here. And now what's so important is that we can keep that same acceptance. And it flows in and out. I mean, it's not like you get to, the highest good and you never go back to your little checklist. Wish it happened that way. But every time we move back to that little E, we have to open and take and honor. The greatest honor we can give Reverend Mary and Reverend Sue is to give the same honor and acceptance and appreciation and support to Reverend David. Yes, we must. And when we want to think, well, that's not, and if we want to go through all the pile of ministers, well, that's not how Reverends James, Andrea, Bob, Judith, Mary, Sue did it. Of course not. It's how Reverend David does it. And we have to keep that high expectation. We have to keep the big E and say, oh, wait a minute. I don't understand what he's doing here, but I know there's lots of different methods to getting there. And with that incredible, strong love and law coming to him as there's new assistant ministers, that foundation is incredible, absolutely incredible. And his consciousness is incredible to choose to have these two and all of this congregation to serve. So be careful with your expectations. Expect your good, but expect it at a level that you can't even comprehend. Expect it at a level that keeps growing in your heart. And every time you go to that little E, and I'm sure someone will remind me when I do now that I've said it out loud, move forward to acceptance. Release it. Change that word expect to accept. I honor you. I honor you so much for what you have done over the years. And I honor Reverend Sue and Reverend Mary for all they've done and all they're going to continue to do. So please join me now in a closing treatment for knowing this. I just breathe in, and I breathe out. And I open to the highest good, the highest being, the highest spiritual essence that is beyond my personal, individual mind's comprehension. But I know it exists in my heart because I feel it. I experience it through my heart. I experience it through loving and accepting and appreciating and supporting. I accept it and know it is so. I accept it for this congregation. I accept it for Reverend Mary and Reverend Sue and Reverend Pam and Reverend Kay and the interns and everyone that supports this service. And I open my heart to a new, larger place of acceptance for our new leadership team, for Reverend David. I welcome into my heart with the same love, the same support, appreciation, acceptance that I've given to Reverend Mary and Reverend Sue. And I continue to give the same appreciation, acceptance, support to Reverend Mary, to Reverend Sue, to everyone in this congregation, knowing that by giving this acceptance, by giving this love, we only grow in spiritual growth. We only get deeper in our hearts. We only become greater than we ever knew we could be. So with great gratitude for all that has come before and all that will be coming after, we say together, and so it is. Thank you. Mary, just stay sitting. Just stay sitting. We're going to do the offertory first, if you don't mind. I just want to do the offertory. I just have to. Thank you. Sorry. I can serve Mary for the first time. Little bit of a little E there. So I'd like the ushers to come forward and prepare. Thank you. And we want it on. Is it on? The hot mic? It's on? It doesn't sound like it. It's on. It's lit on. That we wanted to... Sue? This is it. This is it. This is how they... Okay, this is the heart. This is it right there. This is it. We love them, don't we? We love them. We love them. So what do you have right there, Paul? What do you have, Paul?
What we have here are wanted posters. I'm going to read this one for Sue. Reverend Sue Miller-Bourne, wanted for having devoted her time, energy, and love serving as co-pastor for the Center of Spiritual Living Redding in order to ensure she does not get delusions of grandeur or even holier-than-thou feelings. She is hereby relieved of these duties effective April 7th. Reverend Sue will then be supervised by Reverend David Robinson, who will help her return to more normal activities that will allow her to be just a normal person that doesn't have to worry anymore about church stuff. She will be free to join as many areas of Seva that she chooses. And after returning from Peru, she and Charlie may want to raise llamas or alpacas as a source of income. At the very least, she's free to explore new ways to share her many skills, and so it is.
So we have a wanted poster for Reverend Mary. A wanted. Well, wanted. Reverend Mary Mitchell for having devoted her time, energy, and love serving as co-pastor of CSL Redding in order to ensure she does not get delusions of grandeur or even holier-than-thou feelings. She is hereby relieved of these duties, effective April 7th. Reverend Mary will then be supervised by Reverend David Robinson, who will help her return to more normal activities that will allow her to be just a normal person that doesn't have to worry anymore about church stuff, only spreadsheets. She will be free to join as many areas of Seva as she chooses. Reverend Mary is anxious to devote more time to writing and publishing her books for great acclaim and prosperity. She also looks forward to supervising Paul at home as he has taken retirement all too seriously, and so it is.
Sue, you have a few more minutes before you might want to say something. So you don't have to say it yet. We have a little bit here yet to do. And I'm going to turn it over to Diana. So you two can just sit if you'd like to for a minute and enjoy the show. And you'll get it. We can tell you what to do now.
So, I got an email a couple weeks back labeled Secret Surprise about this celebration today. And the practitioners were invited to take part in any way that they felt moved. And before I even had time to think, I responded to Charlie's email that there would be a song written in their honor, and that the practitioners and board members would be invited to send me their thoughts and sentiments, and that those would be turned into a song. I sent it off, and then I went, what?
That's the biggie.
That's the biggie, right? So, I got the feedback from folks. People sent beautiful sentiments, and Spirit fulfilled the promise, and this is your song. There is a set of lyrics in your program. If you feel moved during the chorus, if it's making sense and you want to join in, it's from all of us.
In almost everyone's program.
Yeah, a few didn't get it.
Well, we left them out a couple. We are so grateful for the gifts you bring. When you were beckoned, you gave us everything. We are so blessed to have had your presence, strength, and love. You will always be the ones who were sent from above. Each of us was on a path we thought we were alone. on the heart of pure devotion, teardrops in her eyes, both in humble grace and service, help us find the way. And for all you've done, we like to say, we are so grateful for the gifts you bring. When you were beckoned, you gave us everything. We are so blessed to have had your presence, strength, and love. You will always be the one who was sent from above.
Sing with us.
We are so grateful for the gifts you bring. When you were beckoned, you gave us everything. We are so blessed to have had your presence, strength, and love. You will always be the ones who were sent from above. You will always be the ones who were sent from above. We love you.
Just set him down. Just set him down. Come on up. Come on up. Your word. Mary. These cards are the blessings of your community to you. They're written from their heart. And as they came forward, we just bless them. We bless them knowing that you will feel from your being, as we know you do right now, how much you mean to us, how much you mean to the center. And so it is.
You know, I can't do it because, will you please be seated? The one thing that I have recognized, and I've been wanting David to know, I get to call him David, that what he is about to be presented to is a group of so much involved souls, such spiritual seekers. I am in awe, and I've had the privilege to speak, to try to find stories, to try to find something to share. And I can't say anything that you all don't already know. And you have made me a better person and a stronger spiritual warrior in so many ways because of you. So when he stands up here, he's got some work to do to try to stay one step ahead of all of you, because you are so profound and so brilliant. And I've watched your journeys, I've watched your confidence grow, and what a privilege that has been. And I love Charlie for giving me the space, and it's going to be fun to see my children and my mother. And so God bless you, and thank you for the honor. Thank you.
Evidence Mary's learned to cry.
You know, when we first started doing this, Home Office said, you need to heal the wounds of the past. And you should do it through a process called co-creation. And we went, okay, we'll try this. And we brought in an outside facilitator, many of you remember. And when she said, now I'm going to do it. I can't even say it. When she said this church was built on sand, we revolted. And we did our own process, and it worked. Evidenced by the shredder we put on the podium, and you all shredded the past hurts of anyone ever had. But you know, there was something about rallying to that. Like, how can anyone who comes in from the outside know the strength of this community? David's going to be so impressed. But give him time to learn who you are, how great you are, and that this Rock of Gibraltar here is going to be here forever. And we've all been a part of it. Thank you.
So now we get to see how really, really wonderful you are, because we're going to ask for you to form a circle, and there's going to be some people helping, keeping the center straight. Diana, can you start getting that together? Outside circle.
One of the highest honors one can pay is to bow and namaste. The God in me beholds the God in you. Namaste. All is beautiful. All is well.
That's okay. Namaste. Please join Mary and Sue for celebration lunch in the social hall, please. And remember Jaya's concert.